we got here?
Hotep, and welcome to another edition of Community Cop. My name is Noel Leader, one of the co-founder members of 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care, and I'm here once again, this time with two of my fellow co-hosts. First of all, Michael Graves, aka Big Mike.
Namaste.
And of course, we have the great Father Lucas.
Hotep.
And unfortunately, Julian Harper is on assignment, so he won't be with us today, but we have another, I should say, outstanding co-host. Attorney Maddox is here once again, blessing us with his presence. So once again, we'd like to say welcome home.
Hotep.
And we also like to welcome our listener audience, looking in from the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, portions of Queens, those watching via the internet. We'd like to welcome you once again. This is a live program, so in approximately 30 minutes, you're going to have the opportunity to call in. Once you see the number up here on the screen, please give us a call, share some comments. But right off the bat, we want to recap on what we discussed, or began to discuss last week on the Dominic Strauss Khan rape case. Maddox was here, laid out an excellent explanation as it relates to the judicial process and some of the legal points which concern all of us. So we want you to pick up where we left off last week. So why don't you lead off? The next court date is August 23rd. How do you see this going, and what are some of the additional problems that you see which occurred since from last Tuesday?
Well, I think the significance is that the fact that it was put off from yesterday to August 23rd, and if you really start reasoning, the reason why it was put off was because the prosecutor's in trouble. And the reason why the prosecutor's in trouble is because the grand jury has already spoken. And so now you're in a situation where you have to unring the bell, and that could be extremely difficult because in order to dismiss an indictment, there are very limited grounds. And in addition to that, the criminal procedure law has to be strictly construed. So, as I said last week, there is no grounds to dismiss this indictment based upon what we've been told so far. And the prosecutor's office has been threatening to throw the case, and has given the impression by the defense attorney, or an attorney for the victim, simply according to the media, spent 8 hours begging the prosecutor not to dismiss the case. Now, I call that a classic example of knocking on the wrong door, talking to the wrong people, and asking the wrong questions, because the accusation was not lodged by the prosecutor, it was lodged by the grand jury. And in order to undo that, you have to go back to the grand jury as well as, or proceed with a judge if there's some defect. But there's no defect in this indictment. So now you're in a situation where you basically got to buy time to get your public relations operation going. And, there was a report this week that some black girlfriend of his came out and said he wasn't a violent man and she had been having an affair with him for some time and all of that. And I think you're going to see a number of people coming along trying to weaken the public and give the impression that this is really not a bad man, and he may be manipulative, but he wasn't violent. And this is the result of what has happened. One of the things I did was to sort of diagram this case, and Michael and I know last Wednesday night, I basically said that from what I had seen so far, it was on an international level, and that you had Interpol and people like that involved.
Now, why don't you explain for those who don't know who?
Well, Interpol is an international police agency, that deals across borders, with respect to matters of law enforcement. And so, obviously well organized, and people, deal with Ray Kelly and all those kind of folks like that, get involved in it. So, my position was that somehow or another Interpol was involved. Now, that was just my gut feeling, really, in terms of, dealing with these matters over a period of years. And it was interesting because after that, one of the brothers of UAM had done some research in terms of Ken Thompson and showed that there was a relationship between him and Interpol. And basically he had such an extensive relationship with law enforcement internationally. And that sort of hooks up with DSK, so to speak, because there's a lot of deception going on here. And I have never bought the theory that Ken Thompson was a rookie making rookie mistakes. And basically, all that he has done in this case give rise to rookie mistakes by someone who's a very seasoned prosecutor and a very seasoned attorney. And so you can't explain his misrepresentation in this case to him not having the experience to deal with this particular matter. I think, and I think it's rather sad, and I'm not really just throwing the ball at him because I think all of us have to take some responsibility because every time that you ask an attorney to get involved in a case where there's a victim and where she is seeking justice and where the accused is a very wealthy white man, especially in the state of New York, it could be anywhere else for that matter. An attorney running uphill battle, and I think that there's very few attorneys that you're going to ever see that's going to be willing to give up their careers in order to effectively represent this woman. I think that what we're seeing now being played out is a opportunity for this woman either to take the money and run, or she will deal with her worst fears, as she has said in her own words, that she will be deported and probably murdered once she returns back to Africa. And so in that regard, this is a situation where I don't think that we can resolve this matter by simply relying on one attorney to stand up in defense of a black woman. I think that things are so critical and that there are so many forces at work on behalf of DSK that unless the community itself rises in addition to the attorney, that there's no way in the world that this woman will come close to seeking justice. This is very grave.
I just have a question. If they could definitely tie Interpol into this, wouldn't that be somewhat embarrassing? As why would Interpol get involved in a rape allegation?
Well, I think it first starts off with this. A person who is an IMF chief does not check into a hotel without there being some prior intelligence. Otherwise, the guy is not as powerful and as necessary as we may think. I think it's absolutely critical that there was already some prior intelligence. I think that there was already some prior understanding of who this woman was that was going to be coming to his room. I think that, he may have done this on other kinds of occasions. The only question that is in mind is whether this was a case of double deception. Where on one hand you're telling DSK one thing, and on the other hand, you may be withholding information to give a result that wasn't otherwise expected. That part I can't answer. But what I can say is that there's no way in the world he went into this room, checked in, and intelligence, whether French intelligence or any other intelligence service, did not know what was going on. They don't let people check in the rooms who have that kind of importance.
And there's a possibility then that's tied in with the presidential election in France.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah.
Well, from the outset, there's a host of questions that I think we're going to have to drill from you today, Brother Holt. But I would say from the outset that for someone to say that, from the outset, let me just say that to use the use of a girlfriend, that's an old tactic from an old playbook. They did that with Justin Volpe, a man who rammed the stick up a black man's behind. They brought out out of the closet some girlfriend who claimed he wasn't violent and that he's a good man and that he would never be involved in an act that vicious. So this is an old playbook that they're using. Now, from the outset, I would also say that a man of DSK's importance would never be in a hotel without French intelligence, their version of the State Department, that similar to what protects the American president. They would have those type of individuals around, so they would basically know all of the staff, and to make sure to keep it from danger, obviously, and just intel and know who's who. So all the people that are visiting that hotel, all the members that work in that hotel would be under the purview of French intelligence. And for a man who the fate of various countries has been determined by him, where he chooses who gets lent money, who he wants to prop up, and who he wants to sit down. He's been able to do that for years. So certainly a man of that type of importance can involve himself with anybody he wants. So if he wanted her, he can obviously manipulate the situation to get her up to his room and hide, and to take advantage of her. So I would say to you that I think that they are, it's certainly international. I think international forces are afoot. So it's not a far-fetched to assume anything, because he knew everybody that was in that hotel.
Yeah, well, not only that, but even the IMF have given warning to the United States about its own budget problems, and has more or less informed the Tea Party, to the extent that it is a party, that they need to become realistic about what the situation is and not be objectionable, to some of the programs that were being proposed. So, there's all kinds of different forces with all kinds of different motives. It's just that this woman just happened to be caught in the middle of it, but it's an important piece that we can't ignore in trying to resolve the issue.
Right. Well, we do intend to talk about the Obama budget, but first let me digress and go back to the point where you stated that the Manhattan District Attorney, Cyrus Vance Jr., doesn't have the legal ability to discharge an indictment handed down from the grand jury. How come we don't hear that anywhere else? They talk about issues of credibility being the basis of his ability to draw up this case.
See, one thing, as we said last week, when you get to the question of credibility, that's why, they have to more or less manipulate the public and the minds of the public. If this is only a credibility issue, then this case has to go to the jury, because the jury has a responsibility to resolve credibility issues. It has to be something other than that, and what it has to be doesn't exist in the criminal procedure law. It's not like I'm just talking off the top of my head, because actually this book right here, which is basically something most lawyers carry around in their briefcases when they're practicing criminal law, is New York Criminal Statutes and Rules. And in Article 210 of the Criminal Procedure Law, it clearly indicates what a court can do and what it can't do once you get an indictment. Because you see, otherwise it's not a democratic process if a prosecutor carries around a pocket veto to everything the grand jury does. That's basically what they want us to think, that he has a pocket veto where he can pull it out and say, okay, I don't like that indictment. Now, on the other hand, what you could have had in this case is a runaway grand jury. And that also happens. When we were dealing with the Michael Stewart case, we stayed on top of Morgenthau. He didn't want to indict. He ultimately dismissed the indictment. And we came back, and they had to convene another grand jury. And it became a runaway grand jury because the second grand jury picked up some of the arguments that we were making in the public opinion, and they went into it, back room, 23 of them. Inside, they were going to indict 11 transit cops for fatally beating Michael Stewart. And so that's what brought that about. That wasn't Morgenthau's call. Normally we say that a prosecutor can indict a ham sandwich, and normally they can. But there are times when there are people like a Father Lucas that get on the grand jury that might mess things up. So the purposes that were originally intended may not happen, because if you can't control the members of the grand jury and they say, hey, these are our rights, and we're going to do what we want to do because the prosecutor under the law is only a legal advisor to the prosecutor or to the grand jury. He has no other authority than that. So if a grand jurors know that, hey, this guy's only going to advise us, all right, but ultimately we got to make the right decision, and that's what may have happened. Now, what motivated them, who was in it, what brought it about, I can't say, but that's the situation.
You know, I'm very concerned, Attorney Maddox, when I see a plethora of black organizations all over the city that's not addressing this. Now, I can't use it as an excuse that they're ignorant to the law because they come out on various other things. The silence is deafening that I hear in the black community with respect to this DSK case. Now, I think that in terms of leadership, I think that's the real problem because I think the average person, they wait on leaders to decide what the next move is going to be. And unfortunately, in this particular case, nobody is willing to step out there for the most part, other than 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care, as well as United African Movement that you chair, are willing to step out there because the fact of the matter is the district attorney's office that's run by Cyrus Vance, we all know for the most part, is still being run by DA Robert Morgenthau. And they know the fear that's injected just by the mention of his name. Most black organizations just running for the tall grass. So I think it's unfortunate that at this time that the rape of a black woman, where after 5 centuries of it, that's one thing that we should be shouting, never again. Never again when it comes to the rape of a black woman, yet most black organizations are silent.
And before you answer, let me just add a little historical. We talked about earlier, you know, when Emmett Till was accused of just winking at a white girl, so there was outrage emanating from the white community. And historically, whenever a black man has been accused of making any sexual advance to a white woman, they brought it to him, a lot of lynchings, a lot of murders, even when it was false. In the Central Park instance, when they were accused of raping a white woman in Central Park, Donald Trump had the nerve to call for their death. So, you know, we see a white male response when there's an allegation that a black man has done something inappropriate to a white woman. So, adding on to what Mike was says, you know, this is an international. This story is going international. There's local individuals and organizations, but big up to Bill Perkins because he did have 2 press conferences and other smaller groups as well. But there's the silence. You know, when you look at the white male response to white women being attacked by blacks, and look at how it's response.
Well, part of the silence, of course, has to be given to the media too. You know, who controls the media, and a lot of folks in our community are buffaloed by and all this crap coming over to the media, or the lack of credibility and all that crap without being investigated. A lot of folks are afraid to stick their necks out because, like what happened in the Central Park case, where these folks were condemned before 3 months before the trial began because of the media.
Why the silence and the historical connection between?
Well, you know, one other thing too, though, is that I think you're also looking at checkbook litigation here, because you know, there are groups that have a real interest, not necessarily immediate but eventual in these cases. Now, take the case of Michael Stewart, Cliff Clay Jones, who was chief counsel in that case, and myself and Michael Warren, who helped him. We were committed to taking this case to trial. And if you notice these so-called police brutality cases, they never go to trial. You know, and so people never see what really happened because hush book settlements are written up where nobody can talk about what happened. Now, in the Michael Stewart case, the outcome was determined by trying to protect Ed Koch and also Elliot Gross, and we were involved in having some personal history of Ed Koch being directly involved in Michael Stewart, and encouraging Michael Gross, to doctor. Elliot Gross.
Now, who was Elliot Gross?
Elliot Gross was the ME, the medical examiner that said in New York. Right. And he was encouraging him to doctor up the reports, obviously because he wanted to protect, law enforcement.
Now, part of the report, no, please don't.
Right, sure.
Part of the report was that Michael Stewart was murdered by police
without cops, right?
And there was some issue with his eyes.
Eyes, right, sure. And what happened is that the traces of criminality, in terms of the beating as it relates to the eyes, were removed.
His eyes were removed.
The evidence of criminality that you can detect from examining the eyes. And so what the medical examiner said was just more or less just a heart attack. The man just naturally died, and so that really wasn't the case at all. And it was obvious that we were going to pursue it. And all of a sudden we get a call and say, well, you're no longer on the case. And next thing we know, the NAACP settles it. And I think they got about $1.7 million, something like that, in a settlement. That was the end of the case. So what happens is that there are groups who do get money to make sure that these kinds of cases never see the light of day. And I think that when you look at DSK, though, we have to be very honest about this. I'm sure that he has a lot of public relations firms already he's in contact with in New York City. I'm sure that he knows the people in our community who know how to spin events. And I'm sure that, those people have been the beneficiaries of some of his largesse.
In the Michael Stewart case, so getting back to Michael's idea about the silence, that wasn't true in that case because December 12th movement kept that case in the street daily, until you got this.
Well, yeah, I think
we're not talking about that. I'm talking about in this particular
case. I know. I'm saying this is something opposite while that case was kept because there were people who were not silent in regard to Michael Stewart.
Well, I think that the reality of it as it relates to Michael Stewart is that it ultimately ended up being transferred to the NAACP. I think that's really a real big issue, and so that's what this came about, and nobody was able to stop the transfer. And then once it was transferred, they think it was a settlement.
It's not about it's no longer about justice.
Right. Yeah, that's it. Right. Yeah, it was just simply that. And so, but obviously, in all these cases, whether it's the Warner Brothers, with the going up there with the $50,000 that was given out from the beginning and buying off people and all of that. There's a lot of money that gets involved in these cases because more important than anything else, people trying to protect their images, they try to protect their reputations. And they have long-range consequences. And while you or I may not pay $300,000 or $400,000, but some of these people will because they think their reputation is much more valuable than the $300,000 or $400,000 they're paying out. And I'm sure that with DSK, that over the next 3 weeks, we're going to be seeing a lot of strange activity going on in our community.
Well, the silence is strange.
Yeah, right, sure.
I think what you point out is absolutely correct. Certainly, the NAACP played the buffer in certain cases. Of course, in Tawana Burley and some other cases that they took over and then they settled.
Absolutely.
And so there were no culprits.
No.
Even though somebody was raped or somebody was killed,
absolutely,
there was no culprits in the case. And I think now I just can't excuse the silence when a black woman is raped. Now, we saw that same silence when a black man's house was accosted by at least 7 or more whites in Long Island in the John White case. We didn't see the support from all these black organizations. They laid on the sideline. They picked little lightweight things in terms of what they're going to support, just things that generate a little media thing, but real bread and butter issues like when John White, when his life was on the line, you didn't see them. You saw 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement and United African Movement. Because you're really going against the white power structure when you really go against certain organizations. And I think these same organizations are afraid of Robert Morgenthau, and they're not going to come out on this. It's not a question of the media. It's a question of power and its relationship here, and with DSK, and you combine that with Robert Morgenthau, these organizations are going to lay on the sideline, and then later they'll give you a reason, oh, I wanted to, but X, Y, Z, they're just going to come out. But right now, a black woman was raped, and there's no excuse for not supporting a black woman that's raped.
Well, I'm going to go a little bit farther than that, and I'm going to implicate Father Lucas' friend in this. I think that I think that really the paymaster in all of this is the Reverend Al Sharpton. And he's the guy today who got all the cash. And that money being given to him to make sure that he drop it off in appropriate places to make sure nothing happened. I mean, that's just exactly the only way that you can conclude how this is really taking place. And the thing with Reverend Sharpton is, which is because I know him very well, is that he's more interested in influence and power than he is in money. I mean, I'm not saying that he's not caught up with money, but he's more motivated by just being the head Negro in charge. Right. And these titles, that he can. So he doesn't mind paying that kind of cash. He doesn't mind going to white folks saying we got a problem, and I think I can resolve it. Because that's what his role is in the black community. And I'm telling you that if you follow the money trail, it's going to go right up to the National Action Network on 145th Street. Wow.
The other thing, I just don't have that much faith in organizations. I have the faith in the people in the streets far more. So I'm not that concerned about the size of these organizations because they could be paid off, and as Alton said, through the emissary. I was going to suggest that I know who should carry the money.
Father, we want another issue we want to touch real quick before we go to phones, and we definitely want to go back to the SK case. This week, as many of you know, a so-called economic collapse was averted when Barack Obama, in conjunction with his Republican counterparts, reached an agreement and signed a new budget. Father Lucas, what were some of your impressions of some of the details of this particular budget?
I'm not surprised. I think Obama did what Obama does best. Talk nonsense about bipartisanship and compromise when all he's doing is sucking out to the Republicans. This budget is a disaster. What it really did, when you talk about compromising, the Republicans got exactly what they wanted. No tax loopholes being closed. No tax for the rich. Continue the George Bush tax benefit for and what did we get? The same president who said they never touch Social Security and Medicare, which has no right to be touched because that's all paid for by our taxes. But what does he do? He caves into that, and that's now a part of this so-called deal. So the only ones who's going to benefit from this is the usual, the rich. Well, it's going to be taken out on the backs of the elderly and on the backs of the young. And to call this a compromise is really BS spoken beautifully, and that's what he's game for. But he's as responsible when he allowed 7 times under idiot Bush administration. In fact, the whole history of the past president, the idea of debt increase has never been connected with budget considerations, and he allowed that to be happen. He allowed the debate to be in terms of the budget versus the debt increase. He should have never allowed that, but he let them set the tone of the debate. Instead of and then he had other outs. He had the 14th Amendment out. He had a number of outs where he could have done it if he had the balls to do so. So, it's just such a disaster that this so-called first black president, because he's simply part of their crowd.
Yeah, I think I agree with Father Lucas. I mean, the bottom line is, I don't think we're really going to see or feel the impact right now, but it's going to be hanging over the horizon because they were basically given a blank check. And, and they can cut out whatever they want to get ready to cut out now. And it's all going to be about us, and I think that was the basic design, and it's the only thing that he thinks that he has to bargain with, to trade us in for another 4 years, and that's what we're looking at right now.
I would just say that the threats were basically manufactured. It was not real. Obviously, he wasn't going to allow America, as it's currently constructed, to be dissipated. So that wasn't going to happen. I'll just say that he did protect the big three: Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security was protected. That's not on the table. The only thing is that there was I think the Republicans won out in the sense that there's no real revenue enhancement, which means taxes. They made sure that that wasn't going to be, so the billionaires can continue to enjoy paying less than in taxes than the people who work under them. So this is only going to be for a little over a year, and by Christmas of next year, it'll happen again. So to me, nothing was achieved other than it was just a delay. And I think that when that happens, the people who have the interest in it wins because there's no new revenues.
We must be reading different things. I have to strongly disagree with he protected Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. He said them, he traded them down the drain. That's part of it.
That's not the case. I read it. That's not the case.
Then we probably read a different guy.
I think we did.
Okay, but wait till it come out. Everybody else knows it.
The big three have been protected for now. Okay.
Well, my ultimately, I think really the big problem here is really the Federal Reserve System. I think it is really a question of international private bankers making money off of us, off of the backs of poor people and those who are actually powerless. And this has been going on since 1913. When you establish it, there's been nothing essential but financial calamity from the Federal Reserve System since its own existence. And as long as you got to be caught in these situations where you got to always be borrowing, and always be borrowing at exorbitant rates, and always be borrowing according to the terms of these international bankers, you're going to always be in this. This is a vicious cycle that at some point got to be resolved. It is not resolved by the way that Obama has done this, and representing the interests of poor people, he had the opportunity to really create the kind of confrontation that's necessary to bring this to an end.
All right, a lot to discuss. We'll go straight to our phone callers. First phone caller, where you calling from? Welcome to Community Cop. First caller, you're on the air. Okay, all right, we don't have that phone caller next.
Hello?
Where you calling from, caller?
Marlon, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Very good. Turn up the mic in the studio, in the control room. Yes, question or comment for our guest?
Yeah, what up, Noel? What up? Michael, Father Lucas, State Automatic, I love you very much.
Yes, sir.
My questions are to you. What do you think, Automatic, what do you think is the prediction for, I'm sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied.
All right, real quick, call. We got a lot of callers on
What's the
there.
prediction for Barack Obama as he has failed in his latest policy? And why is it so hard for you to get reinstated? OTAP, reinstate Automatic. I'm sorry for the mix-up.
Okay, brother. Thank you for your call, like always.
Well, I think based upon the formula that I have studied under, any president that promotes the bond market has a great chance of being reelected. And that's what this president has done. He has promoted and furthered the economic viability of the bond market. And I think it's going to be great next year.
As it relates to your reinstatement.
Well, obviously, I think that at the appropriate moment, we have all the evidence. It's just, as Father Lucas just said, it's really just a community response that has to take place. I mean, there's nothing that really in any way justify what has happened. And I'm simply making a simple request. I only want the governor to open up the Brawley file. That's all. I'm not asking for reinstatement at this moment. I just want everybody to read the Brawley file and then reach a conclusion as to whether I should have been disbarred in the first place. I think it's all in the record. I don't understand how New York can claim that to one perpetrator hoax that I helped her perpetrate that hoax, and yet they can't reveal the file because it is a hoax. I mean, there just seems to be some inconsistent by that argument. And I think there's just a simple request. If in fact it was a hoax, as New York claims, but has never opened the files to show it. Now you gotta remember, there's never been a trial here. The only trial that took place here, to some extent, was a defamation trial, and I won that. That's what people fail to realize. They hear about, Mason and Sharpton, but the jury found in my favor in that trial. Now, that ought to mean something. If you don't want to do that, then bring me up on criminal charges. Let's try that case. And let's see where that goes. But the reality of it, every time I've been given a jury trial, I won it. And so I don't understand how New York can just continue to hide behind this claim as a hoax, when even jurors, when they hear the facts, and they heard up in Dutchess County, say, no, this man was not lying.
All right, thank you. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from?
Yeah, I'm calling from Harlem.
Okay, quick question.
All you guys. I want to make a statement first, and I want to say happy birthday to myself, just in case I didn't get off the basis.
All right, happy birthday, brother. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, brother. I know sometimes I'm divisive with my comments toward law enforcement community, but I have a reason to be.
That's okay, brother.
I want to say thank you, Mr. Maddox, for touching on the basis and you and Brother Gray about the incident with this young lady, because I also want to add DSS here, which protects our politicians abroad, also helps Interpol pull information. So when the high-ranking officials from other countries come sit amongst us, I'm glad you guys touched on it, because they knew who they were sending to the room when they sent us.
Yes,
because
sir.
They did a background check on almost everybody in there. They knew who was going to wind up being sick and who was going to replace who.
Okay.
You told me last year to reach out to you because I had several incidents with the police here in New York where an officer committed perjury, and Vance Jr. and his high-ranking lawyers in his DA's office knows about this. I just spoke to one about a week or two ago. You told me I could reach out to you on your personal line to your Brooklyn number. And every time I see the call, they tell me that you don't deal with the public. If you could possibly speak on that.
Okay, I don't know who you spoke to. Do you know who you spoke to?
One is the answering service, and then it's a young lady or an older woman that called me back from the office that said that, no longer.
All right, we'll give our number again at the end of the program. I don't know who the female is. And all right, but thank you for your call, brother. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from?
It's all right. My name is Rob Shakur from Harlem, New York. I just want to, you brought to speak about a lot of skepticism based on the situation with the sister allegedly being raped. Her lawyer, Kim Thompson, was on KFFM Community Talk Show about a month and a half ago and explained in graphic detail the circumstances of the incident. And I think she clarified that she was alleged she was orally sodomized as opposed to vaginally or anally raped. And I think it begs the question, in the black community, we're just realists, and we all know that rape is an issue of control as far as sex. So, if a person who's raping you orally, he would lose that sense of control if you're resisting, fearing that, obviously you're going to bite down on his genitals. So, and supposedly this man ejaculated in her mouth. And it just begs the question, it just common sense wants you to bite down on it, or just are there any defensive marks on his genitals, and that question been posed to the sister. Because as far as
brother, we got your point. Hold it, excuse me. We got your point, brother. One thing I can say from an individual who supervises a domestic violence unit, you can't never predict how victims who's being victimized are going to respond. Whether or not she would have, should have, could have bit down on it. Rape victims, when you're in that particular, when you're being violated in that manner, no one can say how a woman should or could respond. So we were there when Ken Thompson had the interview, and so we heard this conversation, and we agree totally with the facts as it relates to that particular case.
Well, I'm concerned about that line of questioning. I don't think that a black woman who was raped has to answer to why didn't she bite his genitals off, or why didn't she do a Bruce Lee move and counter this or do whatever. I don't think that's the line of questioning. I've never heard any time a white woman was allegedly raped, why didn't she do this defensive tactic or that. So I don't think that it is right or proper or appropriate to ask her why didn't she do X and Y maneuver to him. She was overpowered. She said she was overpowered. Her injuries are consistent with a person that was overpowered. She has a rotor cuff injury, a torn rotor cuff, as well as injuries to her vaginal area. So that's consistent with a person that was resisting a rape. This was not consensual. The DNA evidence was there. So I don't think that line of questioning is really appropriate as to why didn't she respond in X, Y, Z fashion.
Well, and I agree with that. And I also just add that I don't know whether there's a reasonable woman standard here.
Exactly.
I don't know whether anybody ever established that. What would a reasonable woman do? And I think we know. And I think the reality is that some women will behave some certain way, and some other women will behave differently. Right. But it doesn't mean that anybody is guilty because they didn't subject themselves in the way that you see how their response should have been.
Well, that's another reason why this thing has to be
Exactly.
done in court, because we hear all kinds of charges being made for folks who hasn't been there, folks who really can verify. That's why the court is the important place.
Right.
So Vance is talking about, well, he doesn't have the authority to do it anyway. So.
All right, next caller. Welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from?
It's John from Manhattan. How are you?
All right, yo, turn up the voice level in the room. Yes.
Yeah, first of all, every week I call with the same complaint. No, Jimmy Carter Barack Obama didn't have a say, so he wasn't negotiating. He signs off on it. All right, let's get our facts straight. Second, Mike, you're just too ignorant, dude. You really are. There's black women that are getting raped all the time in these neighborhoods. Why aren't you guys there then? Why do you want TV about blacks, whites on blacks? And Mr. Maddox, you actually are very intelligent. I actually like watching on the show. I wish you were on it more because you.
One thing about this caller. He has a tendency, and he enjoys this.
No, all right.
Thank you for your call. We got your message. Thank you for your call. He loves calling people ignorant, one person on the panel ignorant, and then trying to compliment another one, and make some more other derogatory comment about somebody. Just state your point.
I think the fact of the matter is, if you throw a brick into the back of dogs, the dog that's going to howl is the one that was hit by the brick. So obviously it's something that I said or that Noel said that you have a problem with. Obviously, the brilliant attorney Maddox, when he lays it down, he's going to cut you in half. However, you're not going to have any wiggle room to get out of it. You're just going to have to remain cut in half. So, of course, again, as I told you last time, you could tell your president, Jefferson Davis, that I said hi.
And for you to think that the president doesn't have any influence in terms of the negotiations as it relates to this budget, it's foolish that he doesn't have a say. He's the president of the United States. Matter of fact, the Republican line is that he was impotent, that he didn't involve himself, that he stepped on the side, he didn't offer a plan, et cetera, et cetera. So, I just differ with your perspective as it relates to that. Anyone want to comment? All right. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from?
Yeah, I'm calling from Harlem.
Okay, good question or comment.
Yeah, I was just like, where is Sharpton and all this? I know, like, right after y'all show, he'll be hosting a show, a 6 o'clock spot on MSNBC, but as of yet, I haven't heard anything from this cat in regard. I guess he's, like, basically forfeited all causes for his.
Okay, who'd like to answer?
Well, I think one of the things, they, at some point, Reverend Sharpton entered into a pact with the devil. And I think that, from his perspective, he believed that it was profitable to do that. And that he would no longer have to worry about these criminal prosecutions and all those kind of things. We had a bunch of them lined up against him. And so he basically doing the bidding. I think that he has clearly become a creature of the media now. More so than what people said he was, but he clearly become a creature of the media now. And in that regard, he sees his role, very differently. And he sees the opportunity to serve as an intermediary rather than to actually be out front himself. I think it's a serious concern that a lot of people have, but I think the reality of it is that we really won't be seeing Reverend Sharpton anymore in the way that some people saw him in the past.
Well, there's no question about it. Reverend Sharpton has a long history of having a love relationship with the camera. For him not to be involved in this case at all, it speaks volumes. Obviously, the last thing on his agenda is to deal with, in any way, in a confrontational way, with the district attorney's office. He's not going to do that. It's no money in it for him. As a matter of fact, it's more money in it for him if he just does what he's doing right now. And I suspect, I wouldn't be surprised to find out later that white folks, because DSK is pushing money around, and I think that if money has been given to him just to stay out of it, I think he'll do that. I think the same way he stayed out of the presidential race where everybody believes he supported then U.S. Senator Barack Obama, where he was really in U.S. Senator Hillary Clinton's on her side. So what he did, he stayed to stay in her camp. He stayed out of the whole thing. I think he's staying out of this one because I think he's being paid to do that, and so he's passing money to other black organizations, and they in turn are following his step and being quiet on this one and staying out of it. That's why it's only two organizations of note that's in it, and I'll give it to Perkins, which is in all. Got to be right about that. That he did participate, but his interest is to protect the district attorney's office. I'm not saying that he does not want to support the victim, but I'm saying his keen interest is to protect the district attorney.
Well, I go way back with Sharpton, but this is typical Sharpton. He'll sell his mama down the drain if the price is right.
All right, next caller. Welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Next caller, you're on the air. Where you calling from?
Hello?
You're on the air. Where you calling from?
Oh, I'm calling from New York City.
Okay, quick question or comment.
My comment is that I feel that, hello? No, I have a comment about the president. I think that he's doing a terrific job, if you ask me. I just wish that he would send someone over here to New York to get involved with our educational system, because I feel the parenting rights are being violated in the school with the parenting involvement with the school, because now they have it so that the parents can't enter the school.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right.
Our student education, especially the way the criteria and the curriculum are being taught in the public schools. No one is doing anything about that. Why don't people talk more about that and make solutions on how to and take the control away from the mayor?
All right. Thank you. We got it. Thank you for your call. Did you want to?
Well, last time I checked, I believe President Obama is involved. He has Sharpton here as his representative. So to the extent that she has some complaint, I think people need to call his office.
With the charter school system.
Right. And everything else that's going on.
Well, not only is he maybe involved with Sharpton, but look at who he picked for his education zone.
Wow.
A man who Barack brought from Chicago, whose main thing was to push charter school.
There's no question about it. Arnie Duncan is definitely the same way he wrecked the school system in Chicago. He's doing it nationwide, and the fact of the matter is, his guy right here, not only Bloomberg but Klein, who was involved, had Levy give Sharpton $500,000, which was exposed a couple of years ago, that Levy gave Sharpton $500,000
in the slush fund.
In the slush fund. He slid it over to him in the slush fund, and he in turn has used that money, and him and Mtume from Kiss FM, they have traveled all over the country with not only Arnie Duncan, but Newt Gingrich. So they've traveled all over the country pushing privatization of schools, and they should be ashamed of themselves for doing that.
All right, next caller. Welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? You're on the air call.
just a call from New York. I just want to give the you brothers know. August 13th, Mrs. Farrakhan comes to home, New York. The Millions More Move Against the Wars of Aggression against Libya, the Middle East. That's going to be August 13th. Home, New York, 110th Street. 10 o'clock Saturday. Maybe you guys give that a plug and get that more information if you're aware of it.
Okay.
On the show. Thank you.
I think you just did. 10 o'clock. We had Wally Clay on here last week. That's don't forget the date and time on 110th Street. 10 a.m. They actually want to meet. But next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from?
I'm calling from Manhattan.
Okay, how you doing today?
Okay, I'm doing fine.
Okay, good question.
I have a comment about Barack Obama. Barack Obama, first of all, I'm not voting for him. As a woman of color, as a Latina, I do not vote for him. And another thing about Barack Obama is, I went on Saturday to Riverside Church, where Cynthia McKinnon was there, Ramsey Clark was there, and a bunch of other speakers were there. And one of the speakers was very clear that Barack Obama was the man that when he was doing the negotiation with that budget, put Social Security and Medicare and Medicare on the table. It was never the Republican, and that is speaker, a black man said that Barack Obama is not looking for the people of color. He doesn't want to have anything to do with people of color. And I have to say this to Mike. Mike, you always said that Barack Obama had met all the groups, and he hasn't met African American. He has met the Latino. But you know what about the Latino? We're not voting for him. Do you know why? He has deported more than 1 million people from this country, and the majority of them are Latino. It's like when I used to work in Wall Street, there was a saying in Wall Street, Goldman Sachs and Salomon Brothers, they never wanted to hire people of color. They gave you the interview, but you knew that you would never get the job. And that is the same thing. What is for him to meet us and don't do anything for us?
All right. All right. A lot of points. Thank you for your call.
Well, I think she's right that he has met with everyone else and dealt to some degree with the immigration issue for Latinos. He's met with the gays. Obviously, don't ask, don't tell has been dispelled now. And so it's time for us to say, well, what about us? Well, you know, with the unemployment rate that we're dealing with, he's not dealing with us.
And Malcolm said it in the Ballad of Bullet. He said, we always last. They take everybody else than us. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from?
Hello?
Where you calling from, caller?
Yes, I'd like to ask a question for the panel. Yeah. For Obama to when somebody runs against him now, if somebody runs on a ticket that says he's going to bring the troops home and he's going to raise the taxes for the rich, will you think that's going to jeopardize his re-election? That's my question for the panel.
Okay, all right, good question. Thanks for calling. Anyone want to answer that? Anyone want to answer that?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
I didn't understand.
He said that if he stated that he was going to bring the troops home, I mean, I don't know where this so-called Nobel Peace Prize winner is and got in so many wars, and if he raised taxes on the rich, would that stop him from being reelected?
Stop him?
Yeah.
Well, I think that if he stops both wars, which supposedly he's planning to do,
both wars, even more than 2 wars.
Well, actually three major ones, and probably some minor ones that we don't even know about, with the CIA torturing people all over the world. But the 3 major ones he's involved in, they might be greatly decreased or maybe stopped altogether in another year so he can get back in. But he's proven himself obviously to be a warmonger. He's hawkish. He ran center left, but he governed center right. So obviously he's much more hawkish than what he claimed. He campaigned against the war, and he's involved himself in an additional war and up the war in Afghanistan. So if he decreases it, then he'll only be back to where he started, and he should stop all 3 of them right now.
All right, last caller. Welcome to Community Cop. Let me go to the last caller. Where you calling from?
Yeah, I'm not going to start any more trouble, Tate.
All right, no, you called already. Raise them off. Get them out of here. Go ahead, Father.
I still don't understand why we keep calling invasions and occupation wars. We're not fighting countries. No country has declared war in the United States. No country would dare attack the United States. So why do we call it war? Secondly, we're forgetting not just first of all, he's not bringing the troops home. That's ridiculous. You take 10,000 out, but you don't count the 30,000 you increase. You're not going to count the 50,000, for example, still in Afghanistan. You're not going to count the mercenaries he's got in Afghanistan, the contractors he's got in. So it's a lot of BS. But you also got now to throw in Libya, you got to throw in Yemen, you got to throw in Bahrain. All of these folks, so it's not just free problems he's got. He's continuing to increase and increasing.
I agree.
All right. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. The last caller, you only can call once a program because, we only have a limited amount of lines when people try to call in, so it's not fair to entertain two phone callers. Michael, closing comments?
Well, again, I hope the last caller says hi to Outlook President Jefferson Davis for us. And also, just big ups to Leona Maddox that's doing an outstanding job upstate New York at the Freedom Retreat. You just really changing the lives for the better of young black men and women. Big ups to you for that. Reinstate automatic.
Father Lucas.
I'm not going to say reinstate automatic. I'm going to say open up the case. You have nothing to hide.
Right. Automatic will give you the last word.
Well, the last word is more or less directed by Michael. Certainly, Leo is doing an outstanding job. We had a great weekend up there. But I think also, I'm very much interested in this DSK case. Mm-hmm. And I think that there are some real solutions here. And I want to put them on the table tomorrow night at the Elks Plaza, 1068 Fulton Street in Brooklyn. We only have 3 weeks to really get this resolved. It'll be a sad occasion for a black woman from Africa to come here, get raped by a white man, and we do nothing.
Right. All right. On that note, we'd like to thank you for watching. Thanks for all of our callers. Little Mo, we love you. What's up? See you next Tuesday, 5 o'clock. We'd like to thank our guest, Automatic, for blessing us once again with his appearance and his perspective. We'll say reinstate automatically and open up the book. Call the governor. Relay this message to him. And so far, we haven't gotten any word from any of our city council people. We sent them a letter about the Stop Question and Frisk NYPD, and we'll let you know nothing has happened to this day. We'll keep you abreast. See you next Tuesday. Thank you for Nat Wood, Veronica, Kit, our production staff. We'll see you next Tuesday, 5 o'clock.
To find out more about this show and all